Y'all, the shit ain't even plugged in. It can't be plugged in until I finish all this shit behind me. This is part 2 to how it all comes together. And for those that don't feel like gonna go watch part 1, that's okay. I'm gonna run it back for you real quick. But I dropped part 1 to explain the next series that I'm getting ready to drop, and that's gonna be terms and definitions. And that's because I want you to understand the stuff that I'm gonna be talking about in my content, especially when it comes to the brain, the nervous system, and energy. Okay, so at the end of the first video, I also was explaining what is the process of from when we experience trauma and how we end up using tools like the breathing exercises and EFT that I'm showing you. From the traumatic experience, the nervous system responds. That is where dysregulation is born. Also, in trauma, the brain and certain areas of the brain are affected by trauma and can become dysregulated. As I stated before, I do not use broken, damaged, or all of those types of words when explaining what happens to us from trauma. From the traumatic event, the nervous system responds in one of those 5 ways: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or fuck it. And then the brain also becomes dysregulated, and there are certain areas of the brain that stop functioning properly because of the traumatic experience. For example, the amygdala, that's our fear center. So if something traumatic has happened to you, now your fear center isn't operating properly. What happens with the amygdala, the fear center, and dysregulation is an exaggerated fear response or an exaggerated emotional response. So now you have your nervous system that has a response, and now pieces of your brain has dysregulation and responses. And in all of that dysregulation comes behaviors that we end up not liking about ourselves. This is where all the psychological disorders and everything come from. This is where the anxiety comes from. The social difficulties come from. This is where the emotional instability comes from.